The report by the Center for Civil Rights Remedies, a social research firm affiliated with UCLA, shows that 75% of black male high school students and 45% of all high school students in the Oklahoma City district were suspended at least once in 2012. Black female students, meanwhile, were suspended at a higher rate, 54%, than their white peers, 25%. And between 2010 and 2012, elementary school suspension rates increased from 7.2% to 13%, according to this report. Joining us this morning to make sense of all this is Oklahoma City Public Schools Superintendent Rob New. Sir, thank you so much for your time today.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
Well, I'm all choked up in this interview already. You had a school board meeting in Oklahoma City last night, and you addressed the suspension rates, which is front page news today. Why are the district suspension rates so high in the district, particularly among minority students?
Well, first of all, there's two things that I want to start off with. And you already mentioned it. This is 2012 data that we're operating off. Now, I will say that looking at the last 2 years since, there hasn't been much of a change. Slight fluctuations maybe by buildings, but it's still the issue. The second thing is that we're digging into this situation, which really is a national issue. However, according to the UCLA report, we're, I guess, worse in the country. We
rank really high in this series.
Really high. And according to one piece of the report, we have the highest suspension rate of African American students. So it's alarming, and it's of great concern because when you look at these discipline rates and these numbers and the out-of-school suspensions, there's a direct correlation to academic failure and dropout.
Tim Willard covered this story last night. He was at the school board meeting. In today's front page, he mentions that you said the district's discipline and suspension policies have been inconsistent. And what did you mean by that?
Well, the policies aren't inconsistent. It's the application of them. It's the implementation of them at the school. So what might be an out-of-school suspension at one school isn't at another, or the length of time might be significantly different. So there's a series of steps that we have to take to become more consistent in how we're administering our discipline policies.
You also said the district is over-suspending students. So let's talk about what do you think should be worthy of a suspension?
Well, I think that when students are acting out in a classroom, a lot of times they're sending us as the adults a message. And it's an opportunity for us to intervene. And so compliance issues, to me, don't warrant out-of-school suspension. Dangerous issues, alcohol, substance, drugs, certainly weapons, assault-type behaviors, those can't be tolerated. We need to keep our schools safe, and we will continue to suspend students out of school when warranted. But for compliance issues, tardies, absences, dress code violations, those need to be handled in-house.
You know, I'm not a teacher, I'm not in the education business, and I'm not even a parent, so I have no idea the world that you guys live in or the teachers that they live in. But it seems like, as you mentioned here, the bottom line is we need kids in school.
We do.
You know, we need the kids in the classroom. Suspending them for not being in school doesn't seem to be the best answer, but again, I'm not in that world either.
Well, really, what's the root cause? And without making excuses, because we need to address these issues, we can address these issues. We're starting now by just drawing attention to it. That's the first step. But I think that this could be a byproduct of the testing era. Now, understand, I'm all about accountability. We have to have accountability in our system. But because there's been so much emphasis nationally on standardized testing, I think that we've forgotten the child. And so it drops back to the fact that we have to engage our kids in their learning. We have to know who they are by name, we have to know their strengths, we have to know their needs, we have to know their hopes and dreams, and we need to connect the learning to those. So if you're in a mathematics class and you have a young man who is good with his hands, wants to be go into construction trades, then tie the assignments to his world of interest, and let's engage him and let's keep him in school, and let's keep them from acting out, and just be preventive in this whole process.
Who typically engages in the suspensions? Is it side by side, the principal at the different schools or districts or schools?
Depends on where the issue first arose. It could be starting in the classroom, it could be a hallway incident, lunchtime. There's just a variety of places where it could happen, and then ultimately it would end up in the assistant principal or principal's office.
You mentioned we're starting the conversation here. What are you proposing to do to reverse the district's trend of high suspension rates?
Well, the first thing has been done, is drawing attention to the matter, and certainly with Tim's article that got published this morning, you know, we're putting it out there and we're having a conversation. The Office of Civil Rights complaint that was filed, I believe, last spring is reflective of this trend that you start off this conversation with. So by drawing attention to it, then the schools know that there's, I consider this to be a very serious issue and that needs to be addressed. Then what we need to do is, the second step has already been taken, and we did a disciplinary audit. So we went around to our schools, we looked at their discipline records, their discipline reports, and conducted an analysis of what students are being suspended for, how long, in school, out of school. And so we have some hard data that we can show, sit down and work with, and then take that information to adjust our policies or the code of conduct. So now you get into the conversation about what warrants out-of-school suspension. Out-of-school suspension is the most invasive academic surgery that we can do on a child. We've got to keep kids in school. So if we're going to suspend them out, then it has to be for something severe. It can't be for simple compliance issues. And unfortunately, we see a lot of that.
So that could be safety for teachers or their fellow students.
Well, I want to be very clear on this issue, that if safety issues are involved, then that student needs to be removed, or students need to be removed from the academic setting as soon as possible. But there has to be an intervention. You know, I liken it to this. If your car's not running properly, you take it to, you sit it in the garage for 3 days, and then you pull it back out without any intervention. Is your car going to be working right? So we've got to look at discipline as really an intervention opportunity, and how we can connect to our kids.
We were talking about the side principals as being the key point of being the ones handling the suspensions. Do you think some of these side principals are perhaps set in their ways, and what can you do? You mentioned the word embedded last night at the school board meeting. How do you confront that issue if a site principal is just embedded, hey, this is XYZ, meets my criteria, they're being suspended?
Let me start by saying that I think our principals and our teachers have the hardest job in this community. I hear that about my position,
don't doubt that.
And I disagree. I've been a teacher and principal, and I know these folks are working really hard. So I just want to really take a moment to address that they're doing the best they can. But it's a culture here that has been going on for many years. And the way to start is by drawing attention to it, looking at those policies, bringing in some programs, and retraining and developing a new culture of expectations and how we're going to interact with our kids. And one of the most important things I think about when I think about our students and my own children, the students need to be partners in their education. We can't be doing education to them or for them. We have to be doing it with them. And that gets back to the fact that we have to know who they are and connect the learning to them so it makes meaning to them, it's meaningful to them, it's relevant to them, and it interests them.
Across the board, whether you're in school or whether it's your career, if you're interested in something, you're probably going to be more engaged in it. We're chatting with Rob New, Oklahoma City Public Schools Superintendent, and thank you for your time this morning. One more unrelated question. The Oklahoma PTA has announced plans to hold an education rally at the Capitol March 30th. Public schools in Oklahoma City did not participate last year. What about this year?
Well, we will participate, but to what extent, I haven't determined that yet.
Would that be a day off for students and teachers so that they can engage in this? Still to be determined. We
will participate, and I haven't determined to what extent yet.
He's Rob New, Superintendent of the Oklahoma City Public Schools. Thanks for your time. Thanks for spending the time and engaging in this conversation.
You bet. Thank you. Appreciate it.